So today we're going to make some fake painted book edges. So you may have seen a lot of people, including myself, painting at the edges of books. And a lot of people feel really conflicted about this. Most people really love the art, but they don't want to damage their books by painting on them. And that's totally understandable. So here's an alternative. So I usually paint my book edges with gouache paint, but the beauty of this project is that you can use any medium that you like to use and things that you already have on hand. So I'll be using Canson watercolor paper along with gouache paint for this, but once again, you can use whatever paper that you like with whatever medium that you like. So I've got the 9x12 size, and I've already cut it in half because I used it on another project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of vaguely put the book down and sketch the rectangle of where the book is going to be, so just to use as a guide. And normally when I do this, especially with this thick watercolor paper, I always fold it first before I start painting it. And the reason I do that is because when you fold the paper, sometimes with the thick paper, it's going to tear a little bit and expose some of the underneath of the paper. So if it's already folded, the tears are already there, and you just paint into the folds. So when I'm painting with gouache paint, I purchased the tubes of gouache and I just put them in these little containers, and that way I can save my mixes, because I have a specific color palette that I like to use kind of across the board. So instead of buying one of those sets with a bunch of random colors, I just go purchase my own colors in singles. So for this project, I'm going to be using white, primary cyan, primary magenta, and primary yellow. So for the background, I'm going to take a bunch of white, and I'm going to add a little bit of yellow and a little teeny tiny bit of magenta and a tiny bit of blue, the cyan blue, to make a yellowish gray type color. And then I'm just going to spread it all over the area of the rectangle, and I'm going to go over the outside of the rectangle just a little bit, because it's not that big of a deal with the hardcover books, but especially with paperback books, you want to kind of go over the edges a little bit, because when you do fold it, you can kind of see a little bit from the sides. So if you go over the area a little bit more, you won't see, it won't be exposed as white paper on the sides. And then just let that dry. Next, I'm going to create 3 different mixes for the bases of my flowers to start out with. So that way I'll have a bluish flower mix, a more of a purpley magenta flower mix, and a yellowish flower mix. So to do that, I'm going to start with each of those colors, and I'm going to add a little bit of the 2 other colors to neutralize them just a little bit. So for the blue, I'll take a big chunk of the blue and add just little tiny bits of the magenta and tiny bits of the yellow to neutralize it a little bit. And then for the magenta, I'll take a big chunk of magenta and use the blue and the yellow to neutralize it. And same for the yellow, start with a big chunk of yellow and then use the blue and the magenta to neutralize it a little bit. And once I have those mixes, then I can just use white and some other colors to mix in to make some variants for the highlights of the flowers and some just other flowers that coordinate with the other ones. So I'm going to put 1 each for each of these flower mixes, starting with that darker magenta color. So when you're painting with gouache, one of the things is that the layers underneath can always be activated when you paint over top of with new paint. So you have to be kind of careful. So since I don't want this color mixing with the color underneath, I'm going in with some very light brush strokes, I'm really not pressing down at all. And I'm also trying to use as little water as possible in my mixture. I'm just going to paint some basic kind of flower shapes. And I'm just going to do the same thing up here with the bluish flower. Down here at the bottom with this yellowish flower. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of white to the blue to make some highlights for the blue flower. I'm going to add a little bit of white to the magenta mixture. And some white with the yellow. Now I'm going to use those lighter mixes and just add a couple more flowers around. Then I'm going to add some white to that purplish mixture, and I'm just going to go around and add some little teeny just dotted flowers, like kind of like baby's breath looking things in a couple of the blank empty spots. And then I'll use that lighter mixture to go in and add some highlights on those secondary purple flowers. Then same thing, add some more white to that bluish mixture and add some highlights to those flowers. Then I'll add a lot of white and use that to that purple mixture, and I'll go around and use that as extra highlights. Same thing for the yellow, add a bunch of white to the yellow and start adding highlights around. And then I'll add some of those yellowish highlights just around to some of the other flowers. Then I'm just going to add a little bit of blue to some of that yellow mix and just paint some like little stems and tiny leaves throughout the whole thing. Take some of that whitish yellowish mixture and just start dotting some little I don't know what those are called, like the middle parts of the flowers. And then I'll get a little bit of that darker orangish yellow. Then I'll add a tiny bit of magenta to make it just a little bit darker on the middle. Then I'm just going to go through and just add some white highlights. And once I finish with that, I'm going to let it totally dry. Now it's time to fold it. And I'm going to fold it the first time and realize that I was totally off the line and fold it some more. Then fold the other side. And then I'm going to slide it in my book so I can mark where the top part is to cut the top part off. Cut that piece off. Perfect. So this is a really great idea to decorate your shelves without damaging your books. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, and thanks so much for watching. Bye.